Let's get some more reaction to the UK budget now, the contents of which, according to the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, are worth an extra £320 million to the Scottish Government.
That's on top of £1.5 million for the Clodagh Bridge in Murray and £8.5 million for Edinburgh's festivals. But there's no cash for Acorn, a carbon storage facility in Aberdeenshire. I've been asking UK Government Minister Lord Offord about that and why the Chancellor didn't listen to the calls from the whisky industry not to raise tax on spirits.
Well, I quite understand why the whisky industry has some concerns about this. After all, it's a 10% hike in duty. I think I would say two or three things in mitigation to the industry. Number one, there's been 9 budgets in a row where there's been no duty rise, so this is the first time in 10 budgets that's happened. But second of all, I would say the UK government is very supportive of the whisky industry, and there's a number of key initiatives going on internationally that will give the whisky industry a great future in Scotland, not least of all removing the tariffs with US trade, but also with all the various trade agreements that we're doing around the world, most notably with India. So there's a very bright future ahead for the Scotch whisky industry. And I'd also say that there's also some concern in the Scottish industry about some of the perhaps initiatives coming from the Scottish Government, whether it's alcohol advertising bans or deposit return
But if we talk specifically about the measures from the UK government today,
after the industry.
But if we talk specifically about the measures from the UK government today, it wasn't just the whisky industry that was lobbying here. It was your boss, Alistair Jack, lobbying on their behalf as well. Yet the Chancellor didn't listen to him. What does it say about his clout round the cabinet table?
Well, what it says is that there's a number of stakeholders in all of these budgets, and we have to get a balanced budget. There's some very good news for a lot of people in this budget, not least of all the economy has not gone into recession, and not least of all for working families. But there are checks and balances, and in this particular case, the duty has gone up for all spirits, not just whisky industry, and that is something that has been calculated in the round.
Well, and also bad news for the North East, of course. Peterhead hoping to hear an announcement on carbon capture and storage for the Acorn project. That didn't come either. Was, again, that something the Scotland office lobbied on?
Very much. We are very big supporters of that project. And we're
so yet again ignored by the Chancellor?
No, we're very optimistic that that will continue. As the Chancellor said today, we're about to go into track 2. Acorn is a reserve cluster over the first 2. 20 billion investment has been announced by the UK government into carbon capture and storage, and we expect to hear further on that in the next month.
But this has been going on for some time. The North East have been waiting for a decision on this. They would argue, in fact, that money was taken away, £1 billion taken away in 2015 from this project. And it's the SNP say Scotland has been, in their words, shafted on this. The CBI say that this is vital for not just the North East, but also to meet our targets on climate change.
Absolutely, and it's a key part of that target, the net zero target for 2050. There was 5 projects put forward. The track 1s were the 2 in the north of east and northwest of England, where most of the carbon historically resides in these islands. And it was very clear that the North East and Acorn is in reserve, and we're going to be hearing an announcement on that shortly. So
you're guaranteeing that this will go ahead ultimately?
No, we're in a position where all bids are in and all bids are being considered, but the Chancellor has been very clear that Acorn is the reserve cluster and that we are moving forward into track 2.
When it comes to the wider economy, the Chancellor told us today about the forecast that says that we will not enter a technical recession in the UK this year. But the economy is to shrink by 0.2%. It's pretty pitiful, isn't it?
Well, we have been through 2 major events, you might even call them 100-year events, where we had a COVID pandemic, which cost the UK Treasury £300 billion of additional support, and the Ukraine war, which resulted in £100 billion of energy support.
Well, absolutely, and every other member of the G7 has faced that as well, yet the UK will have the lowest growth of the G7.
Our growth last year was the highest in the G7, and our forecasts are looking strong, and our economy is recovering.
Our growth highest because we were coming back to the same position we were in. It hasn't actually overtaken where it was pre-pandemic, where the rest of the G7 has.
The forecasts from the IMF and OBR and the Bank of England, indeed, were overly pessimistic. Our economy has shown great resilience, and we're in a stronger position today than we've been in the last 3 years.
So why is the economy doing so poorly compared to the G7?
No, the economy is, as I say, grew well last year, and we've now got good projections of growth going through 2 to 2.5% in the medium term. And what we're doing here is balancing the books. We need to get our debt down, and most important of all, we're getting inflation down. The target was to halve inflation from 10 to 5%, and the latest forecast is to get that down to 3% by the end of the year, and that will be the major boost to our economy.
Well, don't you have to just be honest with people and say that Brexit is one of the big issues here, which is holding the economy back?
No, there is no evidence of that in the numbers.
Well, that's exactly what the OBR said. The OBR says that since the Brexit vote in 2016, business investment growth in the UK has stalled. They say it's stagnated in real terms for much of the period since 2016, such that on the eve of the pandemic, it stood 16.2% below our pre-referendum expectations.
Well, the budget today is all about investment. There's going to be an increase in investment into the UK economy coming. And as I said before, we've just been through two major shocks to our economy, which distort all the figures before and after. I think we need to look forward now to a period of growth, stability, and I think we've had a very good news budget today.
Of course, the Scottish Government is to get more money as a result of Barnett consequentials from this budget. What do you believe they should spend that money on?
Well, the majority of those Barnett consequentials come from the massive intervention of the UK government into England and Wales in relation to childcare, and in particular to help families with young children to access the workforce and keep more money in their pocket. And this money obviously goes to the UK from the UK to Scotland, and it's up to the Scottish Government to decide how they spend that. But we would urge them to greatly increase the offer to Scottish families so they too can enjoy the ability to keep more of their hard-earned wages.
Scotland Office Minister Lord Malky Offord, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.